Hey guys, Logan here from Popular Woodworking Magazine. You know, if you're like me, there are certain parts of a project that you really enjoy and ones you don't enjoy as much. And for me, one of those that I never really enjoyed was sanding. It was always that thing at the end of the project that I looked forward to the least, and I kind of would put it off as long as I could, or I would speed through it. But over the years, I've discovered there are really three things that made me hate sanding. And I want to share those with you and hopefully improve your sanding experience in your shop. So the first thing I want to look at as you're sanding is, what are you sanding on? So we may have our project parts all ready. They're ready for sanding, assembly, and finishing. Most of us probably throw it right on our workbench and start sanding it here. Now, the problem that I have with this, and from my experience, we have a lot of stuff on our bench, probably like dried glue. There may be dings in the bench. I mean, it's a workbench after all. So as you're sanding one side and you flip that part over, the vibration from the sander a lot of times will slide that across the bench, and lo and behold, you've scuffed up the back side. So one thing that I found that will really help is investing in an inexpensive mat. This is just something that's gonna kind of soften your workbench top. This one just happens to be a roll of anti-slip material that you'd use for drawers. And I like it because it holds the workpiece firmly in place. So all your energy of sanding, whether you're doing power sanding or hand sanding, is going right into the workpiece and not sliding it across the bench. Plus it acts like a cushion. You're not gonna dent up your workpiece as you finish sanding it. So that's the first piece of the puzzle. The next thing I want you to look at is your sander. And I think this is the big one for me. Most of us start off with some form of inexpensive sander like this guy. It can be corded, it can be cordless. Usually they're big box store sanders. And they induce a lot of vibration in your hand. This is, I think, one of the main reasons that I did not care for sanding. The vibration, the rattling of these things, plus the dust collection, even though they have a bag, is really lackluster, and more dust seems to fall down into this mat than it does into the bag. And I found that this is the biggest culprit in people hating sanding. They're afraid to buy a nice sander. The nice sanders can be significantly more expensive, but if you think about it, in our shops, we've probably spent several $1,000s on other pieces of equipment. Why wouldn't we spend a couple $100s on a nice sander? Because that's the last thing that's going to touch our workpiece. So what are some of the features of a nice sander? Well, this one happens to be from Unita, and this is their 3x4 format one. And it is a random orbit, even though it is a rectangle. And a couple of the things that make this much nicer to use than a less expensive sander is the palm right here is what turns the sander on. So as you're sanding, the actual force of holding the sander is going to be what activates it. Now, you are able to change the speed of the sander, so you can change kind of the orbits per minute. And generally the rule of thumb is the finer the grit sandpaper, the slower you want the sander to run. And you also want to turn on suction as well. And that's another thing I want to talk about. On a nicer sander, we're going to have a dust port. And the dust port's going to actually collect dust as long as it's connected to a good dust extractor. This one I have connected into a dust extractor that turns on as the sander's activated. So whenever I'm sanding, the dust extractor's on, and this dust extractor actually has a self-cleaning function. So as it's running, it'll stop for a couple seconds, pulse the filter so they don't get blocked with the fine sawdust, and then keep going. On one of these less expensive versions, a lot of times they come with these bags. And the bags might work okay, but they clog up pretty quickly if they do work at all. So that's another feature. Another thing that you'll find with a high quality sander is that they have a lot of accessories. What I mean by that is we have the standard pad on here. This is great for flat work. It's extremely firm, it's hook and loop, it'll hold the sandpaper, but a higher quality sander like this Unita, you'll have the ability to buy different pads for it. So something like this super soft squishy pad, or even have one that's a little firmer here, these are really nice if you're sanding stuff that's not a flat object. You know, if I'm sanding this drawer front, I want the firm pad because everything's a flat surface here. But as soon as I bring in something like this cabriole leg, that firm pad doesn't really do me any favors. But instead what I can do is I can throw on either one of the sandpaper faced pads, Or I could throw on one of the little bit firmer pads that help me contour to some of those shapes. And this guy's even softer still, and that will really conform to whatever the work surface is. Now, of course, that's all usability. A high quality sander is also just going to be built better. It's going to last a lot longer, because if you are investing in a nice sander, you want that investment to last. So buying a nicer sander is going to last significantly longer than a cheaper one. I can't tell you how many cheaper ones that I went through before I finally decided, you know what, I owe it to myself and my woodworking to buy a nicer sander. Now, the final thing I want you to look at in your sanding is your sandpaper. Now, this is the one that for a lot of people is hard to stomach because it's sandpaper. It's a consumable, right? We're using it, it gets used as we're sanding the project, and then it gets thrown away. Or if you're like a lot of us, we hold on to it thinking we're going to use it again, and we use it way past its life. But buying a good high quality sandpaper is really going to speed up your sanding. Using a good quality sandpaper with a good quality sander is going to reduce those pigtails that we often find, usually when we're applying a finish, and it's going to clog up a lot less. Now, somebody like Unita that offers both a sander and sandpaper will have standard sandpaper. This one is just a hook and loop back, so this guy sticks directly on to that stock pad. Or they also sell sponges, and these guys are great for not only sanding curves, but some of these ultra fine ones are really good for sanding finishes. Say you're spraying cabinet doors and you want to come back and sand that finish. These will kind of conform to some of those shapes and help achieve that. So the next time that you start sanding, take a look at your sanding setup. Grab yourself a good quality mat that's going to help cushion your part from your workbench. Look at picking up a nice sander, because I think you owe it to yourself to do that. And pair that with a good quality sandpaper. And I think you'll find that you may not enjoy sanding, but it's a whole lot less painful than it was before.